Latte for Keenan?
That's me.
Hey, you're...
Yeah.
Buying a car online on AutoTrader?
Really? But unlike other sites, you can start online, test drive with a local dealer, then finish online or at the dealership.
Really? Wait, are you...
Yep, it's key.
Able to finish in person without starting the process over?
Really. Your info stays with you every step of the way.
Cool. Enjoy.
It's Keenan Thompson. Buy your car online on AutoTrader. Really.
This podcast is brought to you by Versed. Guys wear that guys wear. This fantasy football draft season, Versed Limitless Pants should be at the top of every guy's watch list. Because while some guys are sweating whether to risk it all on an up-and-coming rookie, fall back on a trusted vet, or to just ride with whatever the auto draft tosses at them, gearing up with the Limitless Collection's versatility, comfort, and style is always a sure thing. Versed. Guys wear that guys wear. Only at Dick's.
To disrupt and degrade the result that will take place in a few hours' time. And once again it shows you the sheer loss of fundamental democratic principles that those that went before us fought in world wars to fight for and preserve. And by the way, I'm not scared of these people, far from it. But I'm damned if I'm going to stand on a stage and be demeaned and humiliated by nobodies.
Happy birthday, Hugh Janus. I've heard you're a massive fan of Shez Wheely and her battle against C.A.L.L the Dragon. How could I help to make sure Shez Wheely wins the war against C.A.L.L and his Garden Gnome army? And this is from the lads. Happy birthday.
Quiet Riot. Hello and welcome to Quiet Riot Sunday School from the Cooler Heads team, the weekend budgie smugglers to our midweek Victorian wool bathing overalls. Hallelujah. 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 I'm Kenny.
And I'm Alex. So,
That's a matter of time.
there was a headline this week that made you quite happy, didn't it?
Oh, it's the thing about having worked in newspapers that when a headline makes me happy, it makes me properly happy. Either because it's a brilliant headline or because I look at it and I go, what? And this headline was definitely in the what category. It's from Mail Plus. I don't read that, I don't subscribe, but the headline popped up on one of my feeds and it said, shocking truth about Retta as new Godzilla weight loss drug rolls out. First users report, quotes, genuinely unbearable side effect, colon. Do you want to guess what the genuinely unbearable side effect is, Alex?
Was it something to do with a colon?
Sorry, everybody. We do our best.
It's just the way you read it. Genuinely
I can't
unpleasant
help being
side effect,
Scottish.
colon.
Well, the actual unbearable side effect is, and it's a quote, my soul left my body. I mean, when I was a kid, that meant you had died. And that, to me, is quite a significant side effect. My soul left my body. Because of the weight loss drugs.
This is
So,
fantastic.
do you know the irony of that is I don't think if that you are on a weight loss program that your soul leaving your body is going to drop many pounds. I don't think the soul weighs very much at all. So this is not a good side effect.
Do you think this is some gullible person that basically did ayahuasca? You know, that's hallucinogenic
We're going to go back to
Native
poo
American thing that makes you throw up and poo. That, you will lose some weight, but the side effects will be quite unpleasant, like your soul leaving your body.
Transmigration is it's not to be taken lightly. It really isn't.
Right, on a serious note,
Okay.
I want to say that we will not be discussing the death of Jason Arday today. Because first of all, we don't have enough facts about what happened. But the implication of what probably happened makes this, at least my reaction to it, so visceral that I'm certain I would fall foul of our basic mission to bring light rather than heat to this sort of story. I don't think I can keep a cool head discussing it right now. So we will leave it for next week when we will know more. We'll have had more time to absorb it. Naomi will be here. She's always a calming influence, because I'm pretty sure that what Jason's friends, family, and all the people reeling from this story do not need is another podcast just shouting half-baked shite. But what we will do is leave a set of crisis helplines in the show notes, because nobody should feel that in their darkest moment they have nobody to talk to and there are no people who care. There are people who care. They are there to talk to you. And so please copy that list, save it, share it, whatever. If you're going through something, don't go through it alone. Right, so what shall we dwell upon this weekend? Well, as weather is the theme of the month, and we have done the drought and the dangers of it and the food shortages really for quite a few weeks now, because we don't actually wait for everything to ignite on this podcast in order to talk about it. We could pop to the seaside and go for a little paddle in Clacton, doing our best to avoid Nigel Farage's reputation, which is floating in the bay at the moment.
Look, since we're talking about Farage and all the time he spent in Clacton, I think that would make it appropriate to take a look at the latest route over 0 hours contracts.
Very good segue.
Oh, what a link!
Yeah, and talking about 0 hours contracts, let me reciprocate. For our final slot, we can look back at the life and times of soon-to-be former Trump press secretary extraordinaire, Karoline Leavitt.
I see what you did there. And also, I get to say, leave it out without upsetting you.
I know.
How wonderful.
So we all know it's pronounced Leavitt.
Yeah, but it doesn't work as a pun that way, does it?
Exactly. So the jokes have to work. So yes, it's Leavitt, but we will pronounce it Leavitt quite a lot because it's funny.
Quiet, riot.
In the early hours of Friday, the least surprising result ever of the least necessary by-election ever was announced. Nigel Farage managed to get over 60%, standing against only comedy opponents, and I include Lawrence Fox in that. His politics are not particularly funny, but 347 votes is a hell of a punchline. This, Farage claimed, was an overwhelming, and I quote, 2 fingers up at the political establishment from the people of Clacton. Slightly undercutting his outsider credentials, he went on to muse how he first stood for Parliament 34 years ago. I mean, in truth, I could have written Farage's victory speech weeks ago.
I called this by-election because I wanted the people of Clacton, the voters of this constituency, to be my judge, not the mainstream media in Britain and the political establishment who paint us out to be criminals and bad people every day. So I asked the voters of Clacton to be my jury. And the verdict has now come in. And it is a convincing, overwhelming win. Please, I'm very shy. On the hottest day of the year, in the middle of August, in holiday season, we have beaten the candidate for the Uniparty. Yes, what an upside-down world it is, where Count Benface is now the candidate of the establishment. I mean, you literally couldn't make it up. And they decided if they couldn't beat us by fair means, they'd try and beat us by foul means. Today, the voters in Clacton have stuck 2 fingers up to the entire political establishment.
Apparently, Farage is under the impression that we all get to choose the forum in which our professional conduct is judged. Want to dispute a parking fine? Stand for school governor. Colleague accusing you of sexual harassment? Establish your innocence by running a Twitter poll. Only that is not how anything works. The Office of the Parliamentary Standards Commissioner, Terminator 2-like in its laconic ruthlessness, simply updated its website at 8 a.m. on Friday, just changed the status of its investigation into Farage's failure to declare a $5 million donation from suspended back to open.
Dun, dun, Ah!
Kenny, is the result the ringing endorsement that Farage hoped for?
I'm going to try to avoid being too obvious with this. So let's just run through the figures again. And it's fair to say that locally, I think he managed to just avoid the man trap that he set for himself. Nationally, I would also say that is of no relevance whatsoever. Now, as you said, he got over 63%, which sounds enormous. Turnout was just over 44%, so just over a quarter of registered voters actually voted with him. And we know there wasn't exactly a ferocious battle for the middle ground. I think the more interesting number, when we're looking at whether it was a ringing endorsement or not, probably comes from the raw vote. Farage got 22,239 votes, compared with 21,225 in 2024. So, after forcing an entire by-election, removing all the serious opposition and campaigning hard for weeks, he gained a baw hair over 1,000 votes. It's not a huge amount.
No.
It's still a very solid personal, local vote, but anyone describing it as Britain's verdict on Nigel Farage, I don't know, it's like winning the pub quiz after all the other teams have gone home and somehow declaring yourself Stephen Hawking. the idea that there's a national lesson to be learned here is nonsense, really, isn't it?
Also, I mean, that constituency, they really love him, don't they?
Completely.
It's like one of the highest reform loyal constituencies in the country. It's like, I don't know, Kylie Minogue asking for a show of hands in GAY as to whether she should play another couple of tracks. You know what answer you're going to get. You're playing to the friendliest possible audience.
It is. It wasn't really a competition, was it?
No.
It wasn't at all. Despite the appearance of Count Binface, our favourite comedian of the summer. Alex, how did Binface do after all the drama?
Binface did well. He got the highest ever vote for a sort of comedy candidate. Over a quarter of voters voted for him. He got nearly 10,000 votes. And it's significant, considering you're talking about a man with a bin on his head.
I mean, in all joking, there is probably a serious political lesson buried in there somewhere. There's also the fact, this is my favourite bit of the election, Lawrence Fox lost 27-1 to a bin. That's already a complete sentence, the one that brings me unmitigated joy.
Yeah.
27-1.
Binface became the most successful novelty candidate by really quite some margin. I mean, 27% nearly he got. To give you an idea, the closest anyone else has come is Screaming Lord Sutch in Rotherham in 1994, got 4% of the vote.
Well.
And Captain Beanie in Aberavon in 2015 got 4% of the vote. That's the highest a novelty candidate has got. And so 27%, nearly 10,000 votes, is significant. I saw some analysis from Luke Trill, and he was saying that actually, if you look at the right bloc in total, this is the lowest vote for the right bloc in Clacton for really quite a few decades.
Oh,
You know, if you look at 2015, you get 80-odd%. 2016, similar. So actually, it's quite a low vote. It indicates basically that a lot of Tories sat on their hands and stayed home, that there wasn't that kind of enthusiasm for Farage. And it also shows that there is such antipathy towards him that even in a constituency like Clacton, that generally speaking, like I said, votes 80-odd% right wing, people will organize and still manage at 27% as an against Farage vote. I don't think this will make a difference in a constituency like Clacton, but in a more marginal constituency, it really underlines what we've seen in pretty much every by-election so far, that people really dislike reform. And when they unite against them, they're really motivated to vote against them.
yeah.
And that spells trouble, I think.
Quiet, riot.
Priceline Negotiator.
It's me, the
Priceline Negotiator.
We don't need the jingle twice.
What about a third time?
Stop it. This is about vacation inflation and how Priceline negotiates amazing deals on hotels, flights, and rental cars.
Seems like you decided.
Yeah, but I didn't mention that you can save up to 60% off hotels in the Priceline app.
Time to read the tagline.
Fine. No one deals more deals than...
Priceline.
Please stop.
Priceline.
Touche.
Priceline.
Priceline.
Quiet Riot.
As well as the distrust and dislike of reform, I think this summer we've really seen Farage's personal brand tank. He's gone from being that jovial bloke that you might say, we'll pop down the pub and have a pipe with him, and we'll have a decent evening, there'll be some laughs. That side of him is gone, and he has become a very sour, grumbling victim of the whole thing now. And I think he's doing himself irreparable damage. Reform is still, in many ways, a one-man band. And if that one man's reputation goes in the bin, Reform goes in the bin with it as well. So I don't think it's been a particularly good summer for him.
His latest net approval ratings are record low.
Mm,
And I
so
mean, at any point in his career, he's on minus 26%.
that's almost Trump territory. Trump's bouncing off 30, isn't he?
Yeah.
28, 29.
Minus 26% is troubling.
Yeah.
Quite simply, that's quite a powerful base for an against vote, isn't it? If you can unite people to vote tactically in any
Exactly that.
constituency, they basically start off with a 25% in the bag.
And that almost balances exactly the sort of poll figures that we've been seeing for Reform as well.
Uh-huh.
That we have roughly quarter of the electorate who say, yeah, we're all for it, we get it. But we're now seeing another quarter of the electorate say completely the opposite. So I suppose in terms of finding something positive to take out of what's happening, this coalition that seems to be building, that's a very anti-Farage coalition, is something that we should view as being fairly positive.
Yeah. Reform are now behind an aggregate, behind Labour, which they haven't been in many
long time.
months. So Reform have their lowest aggregate polling in 19 months. And Labour have their highest in 18 months.
Right.
So it's going in a poor direction. I was quite surprised actually to read Joe Pike's, I think he's the political deputy editor, I want to say, at the BBC. So his analysis of the result begins with, and I quote, his party has had a commanding lead in national opinion polls for much of the past 18 months. I just think that's really quite misleading. I mean, it is technically true, but to miss out the fact that his party's rating has been heading downwards and he's currently behind before you start analyzing what's a commanding lead.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe for a couple of months he had a 2-digit lead, but that was at the peak of his popularity exactly this time last year. So I think that's quite misleading to say that his party has had a commanding lead in national opinion polls for much of the past 18 months.
And I think there's a very good point to make that without blowing our own trumpet, no, with blowing our own trumpet, it's the reason that shows like ours are so important, because if you work for the BBC, there are standards you're expected to attain. However, at the same time, in the real world, these people operate under immense deadline pressures a lot of the time. And the research that should be done isn't always done for whatever reason.
Yeah, but this isn't an obscure point, Kenny.
No, it's not at all. That's
This
right.
isn't some sort of esoteric point. The fact that Reform UK's polling has been heading in the wrong direction for a year now, and that we're now beginning to see a set of polls in the last couple of weeks in which they are behind Labour, this is something the deputy political editor of the BBC should know.
Talking about the BBC reported that there was, and I quote, some confusion over why Farage didn't actually bother to turn up at the count. Was there some confusion, Alex?
No, there really wasn't. There really wasn't. Okay, so let me set out the sequence of events to you as a journalist, and you tell me if there was some confusion. Farage told his victory rally that he would not attend the official declaration of the result because Essex police had told him about, and I quote, an organized campaign to disrupt and degrade the result. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
That's what Farage said. He said it right after having a solemn moment to mourn the passing of Anne Widdecombe, who he suggested, again, based on really nothing, had been murdered because she supported reform. So he made the connection implicit but not explicit. Out steps a less experienced Reform UK spokesperson a couple of hours later, less good at having plausible deniability, like Farage tends to do. And they put out the statement, and again I quote, Essex police advised Nigel not to attend the count tonight due to a credible threat against him. That seems very clear to me.
Crystal clear.
Tendring counsel, who were responsible for the by-election and the count, the returning officer and chief executive Ian Davidson, says he did not know of any serious threat around the count. The relevant police force put out a statement saying, and again I quote, "The decision of candidates to attend or not attend the election count is the decision for individuals and their security team. We take the safety and security of our elected officials extremely seriously. There were no incidents or issues throughout yesterday and into the early hours of this morning." That's what the police say. And then Deputy Reform Leader Richard Tice comes out and says it was Mr. Farage's team who judged that, I quote, "there was sufficient anxiety and concern," which meant he should avoid the count. This to me seems a very unconfusing set of events, Kenny. My reading of it is that he implied there was a security issue. His team went further than they should have and said flat out that he'd been warned not to attend the count. Everyone said that's a lie, and they had to row back from that. What's your reading of it?
One, any threat to politicians in this day and age should be taken seriously. It's not something that should go without saying. I think we do have to put that front and centre. However, if there isn't a genuine threat and somebody cries wolf, that makes things worse. It makes things far worse. Reform were handled this really very poorly indeed. I mean, Lee Anderson, well, he was on the BBC questioning the honesty of the BBC and the police in general. He said he'd trust Farage over the honesty of the police and the BBC any day. And Tice himself had a couple of car crash interviews on the whole thing. There was another side to this debate as well, because Farage himself said that he wasn't going to stand at the count after winning and be, and I quote, "demeaned and humiliated by nobodies."
Absolutely.
So if there was a security threat, that needs to be investigated. And it does need to be investigated. These claims are made in this day and age. We need to know if there was a threat and what actions have been taken in light of that threat. This story shouldn't stop simply because the election has finished. There's too much at stake here, literally politicians' lives. And at the same time, if what's happened is that Farage is running scared, I think a small smile I'll allow myself. There is something absolutely delicious about forcing a by-election, specifically so the people can judge you, and then declining to appear alongside the people when they actually deliver their judgment.
The visual of him standing next to Binface would be on every front page the next day. In my view, the credible threat was to his ego.
Quiet riot.
Do you think the gambit's worked? Broadly speaking.
I don't think so. The fact that his net approval rating has kept plummeting during this campaign period, and Reform UK's overall voting intention numbers have kept going down through this campaign period, says that whatever it was that makes him attractive to Clacton, it's actually putting off other parts of the country.
Yeah.
That's what that reads to me, especially given the crisis in Ceuta and how much they made out of that. I'd expect a small bounce, to be entirely honest.
Yeah, that's right.
The fact that he keeps going down and down and down seems to me to suggest that they don't know why they're losing votes and they don't know what to do about it. And so with the investigation into the 5 million gift from his crypto Svengali reopening, by the next day, all the headlines in the papers where probe reopens on Farage. It wasn't Farage triumphs in Clacton, except the Express, of course.
They'd written that weeks ago.
They just love him. But every other newspaper, the headline of the entire episode was back to exactly what it had been when he called this by-election to make it go away.
That's right.
And so I don't think it's going away. And I have a funny feeling, Kenny, that all this was in part preparation from him stepping back at the end of the year. I really have a weird spidey tingle that what this is building up to is a finding against him being made, a recall petition in Clacton being successful, and him saying, look, they're just never going to leave me alone. They're never going to leave me alone. How many times will you have to tell them that you want me as your MP? It's just not worth the hassle and the threat to my security and the stress to my family. I just feel that's what we're driving towards.
Do you know, the end of the year could be very interesting because the midterms over the Atlantic could also see the right being given a bit of a bloody nose. And wouldn't it be lovely to think that on both sides of the pond, we're just starting to see the tide turn a little bit. Do you know what really griddles my bits about this whole thing, though, is just the sheer selfishness of it. You know, it wasn't a vacancy created by a death or by somebody leaving politics. You know, he deliberately resigned a seat that he held so he could stand for it again, because he wanted the voters of Clacton to pronounce judgment on an investigation. Now, to be fair to Farage, he did offer to have Reform pay for it, but legally they couldn't. You know, parliamentary elections have to be publicly funded.
Of course.
Quelle surprise. So we're left with the extraordinary position that one politician decided that he wanted a £250,000 public opinion poll about himself, and everybody else had to pay for it. And at the end of it, the investigation that prompted the whole story affair simply restarted, as you say, because just like Trump, Farage doesn't hesitate to take others' money, you know, whether that's gifts, whether it's EU pensions, whether it's big bills for pointless elections.
One final point, Kenny. He also pulled significant resources, some estimates are up to 70%, from the Manchester mayoral election. Now, I don't think they would have won that, but they could have had a more creditable result in it. And he pulled everyone to come and basically motivate his own vote. So he pulled all the resources that he had in Clacton and the resources that were allocated to the Manchester mayoral election. And what did he manage? 1,000 votes more.
Well, that tells us two things, doesn't it? It reminds us that it's a one-person party driven by Farage's ego and his desire to make money. And it also tells us that Farage was genuinely scared about what might happen in Clacton, despite all the bravado that, 70% is a huge proportion of funds to take from a campaign in Manchester that was going to make Reform headlines and good headlines, you know, in many ways, whatever happened. So I get the whiff of fear there. Good. What's your lasting image from the election, Alex?
I'm slightly dispirited by various vox pops, but I don't know if you saw on Blue Sky a couple of weeks ago, I caught the same couple was basically touring every single news organization doing vox pops and saying the same thing, because they obviously all descended on the promenade where you would be, and there was this couple of die-hard Farage fans pretending to be random punters. And I caught them on at least 6 sets of vox pops from totally different organizations.
As a reporter, the last thing you wanted to have to do was go into a bloody vox pop. The point of a vox pop isn't to find stuff out, it's to fill the space.
Yeah, and I guess that, to me, is the enduring image. Because I think it does actually speak to Reform's appeal. There are the people who are die-hard fans who will never switch off them. But there is quite a large demographic, and getting bigger by the day, that is looking at them and thinking, I don't think you're credible.
There was so much to take away from this election. And it might be the sort of ballot paper that was almost a metre long. I like the fact that Lawrence Fox was dismantled by an intergalactic waste receptacle. But I think my lasting image of the election is the one that you mentioned earlier, is the bureaucracy having to stop its investigation. And then at 8 a.m. in the morning, essentially it replies, very good. Anyway,
where
were we?
Quiet Riot.
Timberland Pro knows that NASCAR starts long before the green flag waves. Because behind every race are the doers, the people who show up to the track early and stay long after the race ends. And that's who Timberland Pro is built for. Durable, comfortable, and professional, these boots perform as hard as you do, on the job and off it. Real work, real people, real craft. Visit TimberlandPro.com and discover products that help workers perform at their best.
Priceline Negotiator.
It's me, the
Priceline Negotiator.
We don't need the jingle twice.
What about a third time?
Stop it. This is about vacation inflation and how Priceline negotiates amazing deals on hotels, flights, and rental cars.
Seems like you decided.
Yeah, but I didn't mention that you can save up to 60% off hotels in the Priceline app.
Time to read the tagline.
Fine. No one deals more deals than
Priceline.
Please stop.
Priceline.
Touche.
Priceline.
Priceline.
Quiet Riot.
Britain has spent the past few decades perfecting a rather cunning employment arrangement whereby you have a job, but your employer doesn't necessarily have to give you any work. 0 hours contracts offer businesses maximum flexibility and workers the exciting flexibility of discovering on Tuesday whether they can afford Friday. Now, there are about 1.2 million people on these contracts, and they're concentrated in hospitality, retail, care, transport, and the arts. Now, though, the government wants to curb what it calls one-sided flexibility, with guaranteed hours offers, proper notice of shifts, and compensation when work is cancelled at the last minute. Business groups say the reforms could cost employers as much as £2.9 billion a year, which at least means everyone has finally agreed that unpredictable income is terrible, provided the person experiencing the unpredictable income is an employer.
It's an interesting way of measuring it only from the employer's point of view.
Isn't it? It is.
Because that amount of money is the same amount of money. What they're saying is 2.9 billion a year is being screwed out of employees.
Exactly that.
Can you explain just briefly what is a 0 hours contract and why is it considered exploitative?
I mean, it's remarkably honest as a label. An employer guarantees you 0 hours, and then they can offer work when they need to offer you work, and ordinarily you can decide whether to take it. Now, that could be perfectly reasonable for genuinely casual work, and plenty of businesses will tell you that 0 hours contracts are all that is keeping them trading, and that's just a fact. Remember, these are businesses oftentimes that have been hit with the big sticks labelled national insurance and minimum wage, for example. The problem and the controversy arises when someone is effectively working a regular job, say they're doing 25 or 30 hours every week, but the employer is guaranteeing none of it. So what we have is a situation where you've got all the responsibilities of having a job, but your employer retains the option of pretending that the job doesn't exist next Tuesday.
There's a high chance of last-minute cancellation because it is legal, although it's immoral. There's no compensation for cancellations, even last minute, even if it's like 3 hours ahead of the shift. Basically, if you don't do the hours, you don't get paid. I've been in situations where I've had months' work cancelled. Yes, so you can imagine how, I was in a financial jeopardy after that. I've had to try and recover from that for 3 months after.
It is quite stressful not knowing how much I'm going to be earning a week. It's different every week. I could be earning £150 a week. I could be earning £60 a week. And it's quite stressful to manage around schoolwork and everything else, like social life.
They call me about 7:30. They'd say, one of the teachers is not here. When we get there, then they just say that there's another teacher that would like to work, so then you could go home. It's really difficult and devastating. When they let me down, I spend £20 petrol going there with a lot of traffic in the morning, and they still let you down.
They're supposed to be flexible working, but it's flexibility only on one side, and that's for the business. The business can phone up the worker and say, we want you to work, and they choose the hours. The worker doesn't really have any say, and if they turn down the hours, then they worry that they won't get called back for their next shift.
Alex, that's what the 0 hours contracts are. Why are they considered particularly exploitative?
I mean, look, some people like them. They find them useful, but they are actually a tiny minority. So you do get pockets of, let's say, students or young people in full-time education or people with caring responsibilities, second income earners, people who want to have the choice to say, yes, I'd like to take you up on that offer of 6 hours this week or no. But that relies on the notion that the power dynamic is balanced, and it very often isn't. And so what you end up with, especially with gig economy jobs, is that, employers have maximum flexibility, but the workers don't have the same amount of flexibility because if they say, no, I can't work that evening, they are often sort of put to the bottom of the list for next time there will be hours going, which is something that's happened since year dot with casual work, isn't it?
That's right. We've all been there.
It's nothing new. And for me, it fits again under the general category of muddying the water of whether you are an employer or not, and whether you're a full-time employer or not, and what your responsibilities to your employee are. Same as making supply teachers pretend that they're self-employed so that they don't get paid leave when the school is closed in the summer, or the whole issue of drivers for various gig companies and delivery services. For me, it muddies the water, and it does so for the business as well. I think it makes it quite difficult for businesses to know whether they're viable or not.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
If they end up effectively rely on the exploitation of workers, if they end up relying on state benefits, topping up what they can pay, then I don't know that they're actually a viable business.
If, of course, they decide not to screw the system over and screw the workers over, they quite possibly run the risk of giving their competitors a distinct advantage as well. So by being the good guys in the industry, they put themselves out of business. And for a business that's operating on the margins, as lots of businesses do in this country, that's a clear and present threat to the survival of the business. So there are very definitely two sides to this. But I think the key is that if everybody's treated the same, at least you have a level playing field.
Can I just add one statistic, which I think is the killer statistic in all this? In a recent TUC poll, 84% of 0 hours contract workers would like regular, predictable hours. It's only a very small minority of the people who are actually in these contracts that want them.
We should also remember that of all the businesses in this country, more than 99% of them are small and medium enterprises. In fact, more than 99% of them are small businesses that are employing fewer than 50 people. And those are the businesses where these sort of employment decisions and payroll decisions are a huge part of the sort of the turnover and the profitability or otherwise of a company as well. So the government's looking to shake things up a little bit. I think there are three main things that they're looking at. First, if you've actually been working regular hours, what the government wants is a situation where your employer will have to offer you guaranteed hours that reflect that reality after a period of time. The government's preferred measure period is currently 12 weeks. It's about 3 months. If you've been doing a particular job for about 3 months, they go, right, let's offer guaranteed hours that reflect that. Second, they want workers that have what they call a reasonable advance notice of shifts, which seems very, very fair. But of course, if you're the person running the restaurant or the pub, how do you plan for busier weeks? And this stuff is difficult, for a reason. Nevertheless, that's what the government wants. A right to a reasonable advance notice of your shifts. And then thirdly, if a shift is cancelled or if it's moved or cut short at short notice, the employer will have to pay some sort of compensation. Agency workers are included too, so employers can't simply move everyone onto an agency's books and announce that employment law has mysteriously disappeared. So, most of the detailed rules are still being consulted on. And implementation, if it happens, it will probably happen next year. So it's not that far. We haven't got that long to prepare if there is a change.
This is not we would love loads of small, medium enterprises and family-run pubs to close. People should bear in mind that this exists for everyone. What you have to fit into the calculation is that it's not just you who is benefiting from the savings that 0 hours workers bring. It's also the giant national pub chain that's benefiting from it. It's not just your restaurant, it's also the delivery service that's killing your restaurant. And I can guarantee you that they're doing it a lot more efficiently and getting much more out of it than you as a tiny business. This is what I find a little bit frustrating in that it's always seen as, loads of small businesses will close. Or maybe they will flourish because the people taking advantage of this are the massive chains and massive breweries and massive delivery services that are killing your small pub. Swings and roundabouts, right?
It's fascinating, actually. Britain is by no means condemned by the laws of capitalism to this particular arrangement. For example, just over the Irish Sea, Ireland bans 0 hours contracts in most circumstances. If you go to the other side of the globe completely, New Zealand has outlawed arrangements where somebody is guaranteed no hours, but is nevertheless expected to be available when summoned. But its employers can still use what they call genuinely casual workers, brackets, terms and conditions apply. The Netherlands is introducing perhaps the most interesting model from 2028, I think it's due to come in. It's called the bandwidth contract. And what happens in a bandwidth contract is that both employer and worker agree a guaranteed minimum. And then the maximum, critically, can normally be only 30% higher. So if I work in a pub or a restaurant and I'm guaranteed 10 hours a week, my boss can flex me up to 13, rather than flexing them from 0 to 40 hours, depending on whether 3 coach parties appear at the front door one night. Yeah, there are exceptions for groups, including students and pensioners and such like. That strikes me as a particularly sensible destination. You don't abolish flexible work because it does work for businesses and it does work for the workers. What you do is you give people a guaranteed floor, and that gives the businesses a place that they can plan from. You allow an agreed and sensible band of flexibility above it, and you use fixed-term contracts for genuinely seasonal jobs and preserve properly voluntary casual work for people who actually want it. In other words, flexibility should be free. If a business wants somebody else to absorb some of its uncertainty, it should have to pay a little for the privilege.
Kenny, as the resident comms guy, what do you think about how this debate is framed by the media? I mean, we need success in the economy. We need productive workers. Is this, do you think, a battle that can be won politically if it is set out the right way?
I think there's a very important point to be made here about how what we see as a business versus employee battle lines are often drawn. We'll sometimes see it as a TUC versus CBI battle, for example. TUC doesn't like 0 hours contracts. CBI does like 0 hours contracts. The put upon worker or the hardworking business people. It's easy to frame these issues as being a battle between ambitious business people wrestling with higher national insurance payments and what have you, and on the other hand, workers who should really just do what they're told, or framing it as a battle between the plucky exploited worker and the fat cat business owner. I don't think either of these framings of this discussion are close to reality. As I said earlier, more than 99% of all the businesses in Britain are small businesses. Now, some of these business owners are going to go back to being employees at some point because businesses fail, or sometimes they get sold. And some of the people who are currently employees or contractors or whatever will eventually run their own businesses. I saw a figure the other month that said something like 90% of business owners had been employees before they became business owners themselves. So the point here is, however we set the system up, and whatever your position in that system is now, at some point in the future, you may well be on the other side. And those in your family or your friends or your loved ones may well be on the other side as well. And that's why it's not just sensible, it's actually beneficial for everybody in the long term to take a much more holistic view and say, we're talking about people here. We're not actually just talking about businesses as faceless institutions and workers with traditional flat caps eating bread off the table on a Friday night because they can't afford anything else. It's a people thing, this, as most of these challenges are. So yeah, the framing is challenging. I'm not expecting the TUC versus CBI framing to disappear anytime soon from our national press. But I think when we're discussing it ourselves, maybe think a little bit more broadly about it.
I need to say, because this is a kind of hoodoo of mine, that the statistic about 99% of businesses being SMEs is accurate enough in terms of number of businesses. But if you look at it, for instance, by turnover, if you look at the private sector turnover, then SMEs generate roughly 51% of turnover, as opposed to 49%, which is generated by SMEs. So yes, as a number, as an actual absolute figure, big businesses might be only point something percent of the total number of businesses, but they are big businesses.
That's right. But that also illustrates beautifully why this stuff is so important, because it really shines a light on how tight the margins must be for the vast majority of the small and medium enterprises in this country, when you see what a modest proportion they return to GDP apart from anything else. It's fascinating stuff. It really is.
Yeah.
Alex, there's other good news on the economic front this week that took forecasters somewhat by surprise. Can you fill us in?
Yeah, there was, again, decent growth. Last quarter, the economy grew by 0.4%, which by recent standards is not bad.
Is this us bouncing back from a hellishly low figure, or is it what you might call genuine growth?
No, because the first quarter was even higher. And I remember you saying, but you have to bear in mind that first quarters in the UK are always better than the next quarters. And so both first and second quarter so far have exceeded expectations. And I think we're seeing that quite a lot. Like, I'm seeing a refrain with a lot of the forecasters and a lot of the business journalists where they're taken by surprise. Oh, the UK economy is not doing as badly as we thought it would. It's significant that this second quarter is mostly inside the Iran mess. I think the conclusion is that the UK economy is just slightly more resilient than experts thought.
Rachel Reeves, take a bow.
Yeah, and we're seeing, things being revised slightly upwards constantly. The currency is stable. Interest rates are on the highish end, but still stable. We're not seeing massive movements. And my own personal theory, I'm just saying, my personal observation is that there was a stupid premium after the whole Liz Truss thing. And I think that has taken time to erode. It has taken markets, businesses, investors time to get used to the notion that the UK is now, again, a more stable environment. And so that's why I think forecasters and business journalists keep getting fooled, and they go, oh, inflation was not as high as we thought. Growth is higher than we thought it would be. Interest rates are lower than we thought they would be. The currency is more stable than we thought. And it's like, what that indicates to me is that your baseline is slightly off. Your resilience baseline, the extent to which you think the UK is affected by external shocks, is slightly more resilient than you think.
Farage on the slide, Trump on the run, economy coming back. Oh,
well,
please.
Not coming back. I mean, 0.4%, but it's not bad for a quarter.
I'll take that anytime. I will take that anytime.
Quiet Riot.
Timberland Pro knows that NASCAR starts long before the green flag waves. Because behind every race are the doers, the people who show up to the track early and stay long after the race ends. And that's who Timberland Pro is built for. Durable, comfortable, and professional, these boots perform as hard as you do, on the job and off it. Real work, real people, real craft. Visit timberlandpro.com and discover products that help workers perform at their best.
Quiet Riot.
When Karoline Leavitt, remember what I said? When Karoline Leavitt returned from maternity leave less than a month ago, she was asked what her secret was to managing such a demanding job as a young mum.
Thanks, Caroline. Welcome back to the briefing room, and congrats on your baby. What is your one tip or secret to women who want to have it all, the kids and the hard-charging career?
Well, thanks for the question, Rachel, and it is really good to be back with all of you. I don't think there is a secret. You just have to show up every day and keep going, and it really does take a village. Take the opportunity to shout out to my husband, who's home with our babies right now. I look forward to returning home later to be with them, but it's challenging. But for me, I view this as more than a job. I view this as public service on behalf of a president who I firmly believe in everything this administration is doing and really creating a better country for my children and their future, and I'm very grateful for that. Blessed to both be working in this job, but also to have two beautiful babies at home. And as you know, Rachel, and any mom in this room knows, there's nothing better than being a mother. So thanks for the question.
You just have to show up every day and keep going. 4 weeks later, she announced she wouldn't be showing up. We'll leave it at the end of August. I mean, I would have to give more notice to redirect my post. So is this another random chaotic event in this random chaotic administration, or does it point to more serious unhappiness? Kenny, moral qualms aside about being the spokesperson for Satan, how good was Leavitt? Okay, I'll go back to calling her Leavitt. How good was Leavitt, and how much will she be missed by this administration?
Well, do you know what? Leavitt was extremely good at the job Trump actually wanted her to do. Now, whether that's a job the White House press secretary should do is another question. But she was quick, she was combative. I mean, she was pretty much impossible to knock off message. And she was really she was completely fluent in Trump speak. That's a challenge and a half. And she understood, I think, that the modern job it's not about persuading the journalists in the room. It's about producing 25-second clips in which you appear to destroy the journalists in the room. And she also helped remake the briefing operation. She introduced the new media seat for podcasters, for influencers, and other online outlets. And the administration itself took an awful lot more control over which journalists got access. So as a propagandist, I think she was pretty formidable, actually. As an honest broker between government and public, I just, a bit less David Attenborough, a bit more Baghdad Bob with excellent hair. But, what her essential skill wasn't explaining policy. She didn't have to explain policy. She had to explain what Trump just said without accidentally explaining what Trump just said.
That's a very funny way of putting it. No, she was, I think, a rare zone of understanding Trump and also understanding the media environment.
Very much. And in her late 20s, she was young to be holding a position like this. And she was up against the hardest of questioners day in, day out. But Alex, you've really got your ear to the ground on US politics a lot more than the rest of us. What do you think actually prompted the decision? Go on.
I mean, the official line is that she would like to spend more time lying to her family.
Did you just say that?
Yeah, rather than lying to the entire nation. But there are a couple of things that make me suspicious. We are, 2 months from a midterm pre-election proper campaigning period? The notice she gave, I'm gone in 2 weeks. I'm gone at the end of August. I don't think there could be something compelling her to do that. I just think she thought that if I make it a month, they will say stay for the midterms. And that, I think, points to something, actually. I think she thinks the midterms are going to be a bloodbath for Trump. It's an interesting time to leave because she's a sharp cookie. If she had one superpower, it is completely justifying Trump's latest insane nonsense without breaking a sweat. So I don't think, the job got too hard. The job must have got easier for her, if anything.
Yeah, practice does make perfect.
It's just the underlying facts that must make her think, I don't want to be associated as a PR face to what is about to go down here. Everyone that has left the government has been a woman. I don't think that's a coincidence. I don't think it's a coincidence that this comes hot on the heels of the whole debacle with the food cart.
I know.
With taking Trump off the plane and putting him on a safe plane.
But leaving her on the plane.
Well, she wasn't on the plane. She hadn't actually come back from maternity leave yet.
Oh, hadn't she?
But the point is that the same incident would make her rethink her relationship. Because if he leaves Rubio and Besant and civilians and the press and all the White House staff on the plane that they think there is a credible threat, it might be brought down, you would start to think, which plane would I be on? Even if you weren't involved with that particular incident. And if you're wavering, and if you're tired, and if you've had a little bit of time off, that might just be the thing that gives you the push to say, he doesn't give a shit about anyone.
Yeah.
He would throw anyone to the wolves. So why don't I go out on a high? So she's leaving at a point where everyone thinks she's really good at this stuff and will probably end up with her own program on Fox News.
Those who have been booted out of this administration have tended to go on to fairly substantial, beefy roles afterwards as well. They've done the hard miles. Now they have to go away quietly, earn some money.
I mean, she might stand. The previous one, Sarah Huckabee, is, I think, now an elected member of Congress. So
that's right.
She might be looking to fundraise and get herself ready for 2028.
But what happens after the midterms begin the crumbling? I mean, I like the idea that she went away, she had a baby. I mean, as is the way in America, her maternity leave you could measure in minutes rather than weeks and months. But, it is what it is. But she's gone away, she's had a baby, she's had a chance to just think perhaps a little bit about the future in a different way. She's reminded herself that a completely insane job is still completely insane and going to get even more insane. And that's produced some perspective. And that would be good. That would be good.
Also, being the mouthpiece of someone whose mental acuity is plainly deteriorating day by day, it must be stressful. And I think the flip side of that is that that's why this administration will really, really miss her, because she was apparently one of the tiny, tiny number of people in his inner circle who was prepared to tell him things he didn't want to hear.
That's right. Absolutely right.
Every White House insider says that while the Hegseths and Bessents of this world went, yes, boss, aren't you marvelous? Actually, her and his chief of staff, interesting, were the only ones prepared to say to him, are you sure about this, Donald? And I think that will be missed. It's another little paper cut at a time when you're bleeding from quite a lot of deep wounds. Can I ask you, just as a very final question, is the US model of televising the daily briefing something that the Labour government should consider? Given how much stuff is now spun in the most negative way possible, given the press hostility and how often we see government having to clarify that no, that's not what we said in the briefing, this is what we said in the briefing, because someone like Harry Cole, or I think he's now moved to the Mail, actually, the Daily Express guy, Calgi, will take it and basically twist it into its least flattering but just about still accurate shape.
Look, I'm torn on this one because I think there is a much stronger case for it now than there was 5 years ago, for example, because the world is a very different place and the comms world is a very, very different place. I mean, remember, Boris Johnson actually planned for exactly this. Allegra Stratton was hired to front up the televised Downing Street briefings. A studio was built at great cost, but not the cost of a Trump ballroom, let's be honest. And then the whole idea was put in the bin back in 2021 before regular briefings even began. And the lobby system itself is far from perfect unless you happen to be in the lobby system. So there's a stronger case now than there was 5 years ago, but there's a huge caveat from my perspective. And that's the fact that you're going to be creating another political celebrity. Suddenly the government spokesperson's facial expressions become news. Every verbal stumble becomes a meme. And, the opposition starts attacking somebody that's not elected. So, in a fragmented and not openly hostile media environment, I think it's worth examining seriously. But my biggest concern is that what we would do is we'd be introducing yet more performative combat into our politics. And I think we would agree that we've already got way too much in the way of performative combat in our politics already. What do you think?
What's the alternative? To just be misrepresented?
It's not the only solution. I think that's the thing. Televised White House-style briefings are a very particular answer to a very particular problem. And it creates issues as quickly as it solves other issues as well. But they would be foolish, the way the Burnham's team are working at the moment, not to at least give it consideration and work out how or if it would fit in with their current strategies on things like social media, for example, and the amount of time and effort that they're having to put into this, because this stuff takes a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of talent and ability to pull off properly. I don't know, but it's an interesting question. Have you ever left your boss up the creek?
No. Maybe. I tend to be either I'm not coming back on day 2. I mean, I used to be.
Swipe right, swipe left.
Because really, in the last 20 odd years, I had one job and then I was self-employed. So you always turn up for that. Otherwise, you don't eat. But before that, before I went to university and while I was at university, my philosophy was, you either don't show up on the second day, which they expect, or if you form relationships with your colleagues and your manager, etc., then you don't leave them in a difficult position. You do it properly and you give notice. Have you ever just had so enough of a job that you went, fuck yous, and got up and walked out?
I've left before I've been fired before. Once for ordering too many Brussels sprouts in a branch of Marks and Spencer that stank out the whole shop and left us with trays of Brussels sprouts unsold. In my Scotland days in newspapers.
So you worked for Marks and Spencer's?
That was my first job out of university. I went to learn to be a manager.
Sorry, throughout the beginning of that description, I was trying to imagine in what capacity as a journalist you ordered too many Brussels sprouts.
I tell you, by lunchtime, you could smell the Brussels sprouts on the street outside the shop.
Brilliant. And what was the other occasion?
Back in my early days in journalism, I was going through a tricky time up in Scotland. And one Friday, I just cut loose. I spent the night doing what young folk do. Until about, I think it was about 4:15 a.m. That little clock is seared into my memory, because that's the point that I remembered. Having spent the entire night living the high life, I was on the early shift at the newspaper, and it was a very early shift. So I managed to splash some water in my face. I rock up. I do my early morning duties, which were like put the world page together and do some copy tasting. And then, somewhat bleary-eyed, I settled down for the rest of the morning's challenges. Except the next thing I know, there's a distant voice shouting my name, going, Kenny!
Were you asleep?
I was asleep. It was my boss was sitting in front of me. So I go, sorry. I go back to work. Minutes later, Kenny! Look, boss, sorry. Third time it happens. Kenny! And bless him, his name was Hugh. He was a lovely man, and I really hated to let him down. But he said, Kenny, 2 things. 1, stop falling asleep. And 2, if you must fall asleep, take your finger off the keyboard because it's going beep, 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 beep. And the whole office is staring at you. So I was dribbling over my keyboard. I think I let myself down more than the boss that day.
Quiet Riot.
And that, fellow rioters, is very much that for another Sunday School. Thank you, as always, for your company and for your fabulous messages in Blue Sky too, you utter rascals.
Instagram fans, don't forget to give us a follow. We're at Quiet Riot Pod. And if you're feeling generous, head over to ko-fi.com/Quiet Riot Pod and back us for as little as $5 a month. That will give you access to our Discord channel and a few other little old perks.
We'll be back later in the week with our main show and B-side on Friday, by which time Britain will hopefully no longer be a place where trains are allergic to railway lines, houses spontaneously combust in wildfires, and bins are our last line of defence against fascism.
We love you more than whiskers and kittens. Bye!
Bye!
Quiet Riot is an audio production from Cooler Heads, written and produced by Alex Andreu, Naomi Smith, and Kenny Campbell. Music by Mariana Sangeeta, artwork by Simona Canelu, and edited by me, Alex Reese.
Quiet Riot.
Did you get your phone alert from the government about the fires?
No. Everybody else in the tapas bar last night, everybody else at various points got the alert, except me. My phone didn't go off, and I've not set the settings. I'm nervous. I'm very nervous. The other thing that really pissed me off, I know it's important that people know don't set fire to things. But at the end of the 5th heat wave, when the clouds were rolling in and everybody was going, oh, it's nice that the temperature's starting to drop. Why then?
Because that's the moment they might think it's okay
to
have a barbecue, when really the flammability of the environment is about how long it's been drying out for, not the weather in that particular moment. So that's when you need to remind people, don't have a barbecue. So Naomi was outraged. She was outraged that the system was used.
She was noisier than the alarm.
I suspect part of it is that you don't particularly want to have to use that kind of emergency system for the very first time when there is an actual zombie apocalypse. You want to kind of get people used to what the noise is and, that it might happen from time to time.
And you want to know who the poor fools are, who, when the zombie apocalypse comes, are the ones that are going to get eaten. And that will be me and anybody else whose phone alarm didn't go off.
I'm okay with that. So...
You're a bad person.
It's always smart to leave a few behind. To delay the zombies. Feed a few former Daily Express journalists to the zombies to slow them down.
Every mile matters, whether you're driving your dream car or your daily commuter. The Mobil 1 team knows that. It's why we created Mobil 1 Advanced Clean Motor Oil. It cleans your engine in one oil change and helps extend engine life, delivering performance, protection, and cleanliness for vehicles of all ages. All to help keep your engine running like new, whatever you're driving. Visit mobil1.com/advancedclean to learn more.
Hey, it's Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. Now, I was looking for fun ways to tell you that Mint's offer of unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month is back. So I thought it would be fun if we made $15 bills. But it turns out that's very illegal. So there goes my big idea for the commercial. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12-month plan required. $15 per month equivalent. Taxes and fees extra. Initial plan term only. Greater than 50 gigabytes may slow when network is busy. See terms.